Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. On my search for the secret sauce of what makes an extraordinary life, I boiled it down to four areas: time, financial, location, and health freedom. And that secret sauce, I'm on a mission to bring entrepreneurs, people on the cutting edge, making a difference, sharing their distinctions and insights on this podcast, and hopefully inspiring you to take action. So today, I have a very interesting guest, Bryan Clayton, and he's an entrepreneur. He's an author and speaker. He's the founder and CEO of GreenPal, which we'll find out later. It's an online platform connecting homeowners with local lawn care professionals, which is really interesting. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Christopher, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this. I love talking with entrepreneurs, people that are problem solvers. And so tell the audience about your origin story and how you got started.
Yeah, so today I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called GreenPal, like you mentioned. So GreenPal is a mobile app that works like Uber or DoorDash or Instacart, but for lawn care services. So if you need to get a grass cutting service, rather than calling around, you just download GreenPal, pop your address in, and somebody comes out and takes care of it for you. GreenPal is a 10-year overnight success. My two co-founders and I have been working on the business for over a decade, but now we're nationwide in the United States, a few 100,000 people using the app and still growing. So it's going good. But the first few years were really, really challenging. But before I started GreenPal, I had a landscaping company. I was started mowing grass in high school as a way to make extra cash. And over a 15-year period of time, built that up into a real business, eventually getting it over 10 million a year in revenue and selling it. So I learned a little bit about how to grow and build a business in my first company, and then sold it, took some time off. And then I decided, well, why can't I be a tech startup entrepreneur? That looks like fun. And it was kind of naivete as an asset, but didn't let that hold me back. And my two co-founders and I just stuck it out. So now we've got a good marketplace going now.
Yeah, that's really interesting because that's how Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, this two-sided marketplace. You have supply and demand. I'm curious. You have experience scaling a two-sided marketplace, and any insights that you may have.
Yeah. So when you're building a marketplace, you have two customers. You have the buyers and the sellers, and you have to cater to both of them. And a lot of times, both of them are pissed off at the other side. So it's like so in the Uber case, it's like the driver gets upset because they have to wait for the person to come out, and the person that's like, well, I'm paying them to drive me, they should wait as long as it takes. And so Uber's stuck in the middle, and they've got to figure out a way to strike a delicate balance between the wants and needs of both sides. We're in the same boat. We have to cater to lawn care services that offer their services on the platform, and consumers that want to hire them. We have to strike a delicate balance between the two, and a lot of times it's just experimentation. It's not like a straight line from one end to the other. You're more like a farmer or a gardener, where you're cultivating and planting seeds, and you're figuring out, like, okay, if I do this, what happens, and if I try this, what happens later on down the road. And so it makes it a lot more challenging, but it also makes it a lot more fun and a lot more durable. If you can figure it out, you have a durable business, and that's why it's taken us a decade to get where we are. But just through trial and error and little by little, making it better for consumers and suppliers, I think we've gotten to a good place.
Really fascinating because it's all talking about that first zero. I think Peter Thiel, he talks about this 0 to 1 scaling, and it's really once you get this mass adoption, I'm sure you talk about all the different incentives. But what strategies did you use to acquire your first 1,000 users for GreenPal, and how has your user acquisition strategy evolved since then?
Yeah, so you bring up a good point. I love that book, 0 to 1. 0 to 1 is the hardest part. It's because there's no roadmap. You don't know what to do. You don't even know if you're building something that people want. And the only way to get from 0 to 1 is just through hand cranking. It's just, okay, the phone number on the website goes to my cell. The email from the website is not like do not reply at greenpal.com. No, it's me. like that. You have to do that in the early days. You have to talk to your customers. You have to, like, really, really, really get in the trenches with them to figure out what are they what do they want what do they want from your product? What does your product do that solves a problem for them? And where is it coming up short? And the only way to do that is just through hand cranking, really getting your hands dirty and understanding what their needs are, and where you're coming up short, or where you're delighting them, where you're not. And I think the first 100 sales, maybe even the first 1,000 sales, need to be hand-to-hand combat, and because you don't really know how to scale something unless you've kind of hand cranked it for a little while. And so for us, that's how it was for us. We spent a year building the first version of GreenPal, and we launched it, and it was just crickets. It was like, if you build it, they won't come. And so we had this app in the app store. Nobody was using it. So the first thing we did is we passed out a bunch of flyers all over Nashville, Tennessee, where we live. And I think we passed out like 400,000 flyers all over town. And we learned a lot doing that. We learned that okay, this is actually who our ideal customer is. This isn't. We thought that our customers would be like high end, the $1 million plus homes, because they could afford a gardener and they had all this discretionary income. What we came to learn was, no, that wasn't our customer. Our customer was like the working class part of town, because the landscapers weren't returning their phone calls.
Hmm.
They couldn't get anybody to come take care of this chore for them. And so we discovered that through just a process of literally hoofing it all over Nashville, Tennessee. And that was what we had to do at that stage of the game to get our first 100 and eventually 1,000 customers. And then after time went on, we began to understand, okay, well, this is more of a way, this is not a scalable way, but now we learned, okay, we can reach these people through organic SEO and through paid Facebook marketing and Google marketing, and we know what they expect. We know what the value proposition is because we've spoken with them so many times, and that began to inform how to scale a strategy and get to the next level of the game, so to speak.
Yeah, it's always interesting. It's always about, the early days. It's all about doing things that don't scale, getting the product market fit, getting the word out, marketing, incentives for, both the buyers and the sellers. Talk about how you approach pricing for GreenPal, what factors you consider when setting your rates, all of that.
Yeah, pricing is a never ending experiment. And that's one thing about starting a startup from scratch, is that you really do have to look at it like an experiment. Everything you do is an experiment. You can't just say, okay, this is going to be the price and we're just going to roll with that. You kind of have to iterate through it and tinker with it and figure out what works and what doesn't. One of my favorite quotes is from Paul Graham, and he says, action produces information. And so a lot of times, you just try something out, and then you get the feedback and you measure it. Okay, that didn't work, but why didn't it work? And for us, pricing is a big part of that. When we first started, we thought that the way to enter the marketplace and to compete was to try to deliver the cheapest way to get your lawn mowed. Because I came to like the starting line from a contractor's perspective, and if you spent 15 years in the landscaping business, you kind of get jaded because it's very competitive, and you think everybody just wants the cheapest price. That's all that they care about. And so I came to the starting line, starting GreenPal with, okay, we're just going to figure out a way to deliver the cheapest lawn mowing that we can. And so that's what we oriented everything around: our marketing, our copy, the words on the screen. And what we began to understand over time, just through experimenting with that, was, no, actually, consumers, yeah, they were price sensitive, but they would pay market price so long as the guy would show up on the day he's supposed to. That was what they cared about, and so they weren't so much concerned about price. They were concerned about speed and reliability. And if you think about it, like an Uber, would you rather a $4 Uber come in the next hour, or would you rather a $7 Uber come in 5 minutes? It's kind of the same thing for us. People, by the time they got around to trying out GreenPal, they had already been ghosted by two or three lawn care services. Their last guy didn't show up, and now the grass is 4 feet tall. They don't really care if it's $27 or $38. They just need somebody to show up this afternoon. And so
Hmm.
we didn't know that in the early days, but it was through experimentation and through A/B testing and talking to customers, we began to understand that, okay, no, actually, we can charge a little more and use that money to then hold suppliers accountable and score them and rate them and promote and demote them based on their reliability, because that's the most important thing. We would have never understood that had we not just kind of worked our way through the levels of this game.
Yeah. It's really interesting because in today's tech environment, data is very important. These algorithms and what they say that companies that use AI, that companies that don't use AI will be out of business. And so, what role has data played with the growth of GreenPal, and how do you use data analytics, AI to inform your decision making?
Yeah, it's one of those things when you have something that's working at a fundamental level, and you kind of have an atomic unit of something that is delivering value and that people are willing to pay for, then you can use data and AI to accelerate what's already working. What I see a lot of, because I like to coach new founders as a hobby, and so I see this all the time. They want to start with AI and data like day one, like right out the gate, and it's like, bro, you don't have three customers. Like I don't think you have 10 credit card numbers on file. Like, you don't need to figure out a way to get 2% on an A/B test or to figure out what data you're going to leverage to. No, you're not there yet. You need to like talk to your users. You need to like get into a Starbucks and sit down and have a coffee with the three people that tried your crappy app last week. And the only reason I say this is because I went through this, and you need to talk to them, and you need to figure out, okay, and then once we get a handful of people using this, and then we can start to look at some data in terms of, okay, what are people responding to, what are they not responding to, what how do we speak to them in a certain way that gets them to do what we need them to do so they can help themselves and use our product. And so little by little, as you get some traction, you can then begin to use data to accelerate what's already working. And then the next stage of the game is, how do I use AI? How do I leverage this big sea of data to then make better predictive bets and better, more informed decisions on how I'm building the product or how I'm delivering the right result for the consumer. And that's way down the line. To be honest, like my company has 300,000 customers. We're doing multiple eight figures a year in revenue, and we're just now at the stage of the game where it's like, okay, we're paying. We've got analysts on the team. How do we leverage this type of technology to make better matches, to make more predictive types of matches? So we then downstream eliminate the negative outcomes, and it's really one of those things you kind of have to grow into. And the mistake I see is a lot of new founders just want to like skip all this other stuff and go to the sexy thing, and it usually is just a big waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah. So Will said, I was listening to this one interview by Brian Chesky when he was starting Airbnb, when he was in the Y Combinator, and they were saying exactly what you were saying, because the Paul Graham was telling them, you have to fly every weekend from San Francisco to New York City, talk with the owners, talk with the product people that are using it, and then in the beginning you have to do things that don't scale.
That's right.
And it sounds like, like even like Uber and Lyft, they just recently, they were launched back in the 08, 09, and then now they're just approaching profitability. So it's really fascinating how the technology and apps and how you create a marketplace. A lot of, like, for example, these exchanges, they face a lot of challenges because you're kind of facilitating. But what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced when managing a two-sided marketplace, and how did you address those challenges?
Yeah, the biggest surprise. So this is something that I did not anticipate. So I spent 15 years in the landscaping industry, built a company, sold it. Here, I think I know everything there is to know about this business, and I almost like came to the starting block with a chip on my shoulder. And man, I was humbled really quickly as to how challenging this was going to be. And the one thing I didn't understand and didn't realize, and what became quickly evident to me, was all of the reasons why hiring a lawn care service sucks, all of the reasons why they don't show up, all of the reasons why they flake on you, all the mysterious case of the disappearing lawn guy, all the reasons why that exists suck, are now my problem.
Hmm.
because now I'm building a product in the space and I'm trying to deliver an experience like Uber, like Instacart, like Amazon. And so now all of the reasons why that lawn care guy doesn't show up are now my problem to solve. And really, in many ways, it's like here I thought I was building a tech company. I was just going backwards back to day one from like first principles of why the lawn care guy doesn't show up and why can't he show up and solving those problems for him or her and starting from that and then building the experience for the consumer to be able to order them off the shelf. So trying to solve the problems for suppliers and consumers at the same time was really challenging. But it was almost fun in a way because it was really like one big experiment trying to work our way through it. But that was one thing that I didn't understand, and most new tech founders don't understand, is that just because you're behind the laptop and you have engineers and you're writing code doesn't mean that you're not like subject to the gravity of the normal everyday things of the course during doing business. Like Airbnb is in the hospitality business, Uber is in the cab business. At the end of the day, GreenPal is in the lawn care business. We just make it run faster and smoother. And here we are 10, 11 years later, we are still making it quicker, easier, cheaper, faster, more reliable, more convenient to do one thing: order a lawn mowing service. Still solving the same problems, making them better and better and better.
And one question I had, because the did you face any regulatory challenges? Because a lot of these disrupt apps and platforms, they sometimes face incumbent. Airbnb had hotel, Uber had the cabs. Did you face any of those sort of challenges?
Yeah, luckily there was no lawn care mafia that trying to squash us like Uber was going up against like very very entrenched kind of shady institutions that did not want to see them exist. Luckily, we didn't have anything to that extent, but there are labor laws in the sense of who is a subcontractor and who is an employee.
Mm,
And I kind of had the scars from this in my first company because we had subcontractors every year. The labor board would come in and audit all of our stuff and try to look for ways to classify contractors as employees because they
mm.
wanted the VIG, they wanted the unemployment tax and all that stuff. And so I had those scars, and I didn't want to repeat that the same way. So right off the bat, before we over compensated for this. But right off the bat, I got with a lawyer and said, "Listen, we want to build this platform in such a way that these contractors will never be our contractors. That we are just a lead generation service for them that they pay us for." And so
Um,
we were able to kind of sidestep all of that. Whereas other Uber for X ideas, whether it be Uber for home cleaning, Uber for laundry service, there were other Uber for lawn care services that came and went. They didn't really understand that from day one, and they got caught up in a lot of regulation in terms of, no, actually these people using your platform are your employees, they're not your contractors. And that's a mess. That when that happens, that this destroys the entire platform. And so we almost, to answer your question, almost were subject to some of those sorts of things, but we luckily were able to sidestep them early on by the way we positioned ourselves.
I love that. As we come to kind of the final things, I know behind every tech platform, there's employees. So talk a little bit about the key skills and abilities and quality. And then finally, to close it out, how do you balance the need to innovate, stay ahead of competition? You mentioned earlier this positioning yourself, and then how can people find you, contact you, follow you, etc.?
Yeah. So every startup goes through three phases. The startup, the grow up, and the scale up. And in the startup phase, it's just you and your co-founders, and you're trying to get something that works. Maybe you're hiring some contractors, a couple of key people. And then during the grow up phase, it really comes down to getting new people on the team, getting people that are specialized in the things you were kind of doing in your part time, in your spare time. And then there's a scale up where it's managers upon managers. And so right now we're kind of halfway through the grow up. And it is all about team. It is all about how do you get the right people on the bus? How do you prune out the wrong people? One thing I have learned was like don't tell me where you went to school. Don't tell me, show me what you've built. It's not who you know, it's what you've built, it's what you've done. And so that's one thing that I have really learned the hard way over the last 10 years was to really look at not necessarily what somebody's resume looks like or what their pedigree looks like, but what have they actually built and put into the world. Even if it failed, what was it? Give me some kind of evidence that you're a curious person, that you have a chip on your shoulder. Maybe you weren't picked for the football team in high school, and you've been trying to prove yourself ever since. And you're, the business that you're working in is the way you do that. That's kind of the way I am, and that's kind of the way my co-founders are. So I look for those types of things. I look for those types of people to bring on, and hire fast but fire faster. When somebody's not a good fit, you got to prune them out and get somebody else that is. And so yeah, that's how we look at team building. And your second question was around, how do we keep innovating and stay out in front of the competition. Couple ways. One thing I try to do is I try to use every product out there. So it doesn't matter, like I've driven for DoorDash, I've driven for Uber, I've driven for Lyft, I've hosted on Airbnb, I've walked dogs on Rover and Wag, and I'm always using these multi-sided marketplaces to try to figure out, okay, this is a company that's raised $10 billion. They have a team of product developers, they have a team of data scientists, and so how do I learn from them and what they're doing and apply it to what I'm humbly doing in lawn care. So that's one way we stay out in front of innovation. Another thing is we use our own product. I still sign up for my own product once a week. I use it. I own some real estate investments, so a few little rentals, and so I'm always using the product to manage those. To manage the lawn maintenance around those. And just by doing that, as simple as that sounds, I'm always finding ways to make it better. And so that's one way we do it. And we use our competitors' products too. Where I think it was a Steve Jobs quote, great artists steal. And so we're always like getting ideas from competitors, direct competitors, but people also in complementary spaces. So yeah, that's how we kind of bootstrap innovation, I guess you could say.
And I love that. Yeah, I know. I love that quote. Just borrow ideas. It's really leveraging, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
If it's good enough for Steve Jobs, it's good enough for me.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm always trying out new stuff as well. How can people follow you on social media, check out your website, contact you?
Yeah, sure. If anybody doesn't want to mow their own yard, I know you've got some bunch of physicians listening to your podcast. They're better off, doing their highest and best use skill. So no need to waste time cutting your own grass, or maybe your lawn care guy ghosted you. Just go to greenpal.com, sign up, you get some free quotes. And then anybody wants to hit me up, Instagram's the best place to find me. Bryan M. Clayton. Just drop me a DM there.
Yeah. And for all the listeners out there, let's thank Bryan for talking about applying, concepts of network technology to a very interesting field, lawn care. And be sure to check him out on Instagram. He's got 32,000 followers. I've just followed him, and Twitter and LinkedIn. And with that, thanks so much for coming out to the podcast.
Thank you, Christopher. I enjoyed it.